Thanks for staying with us. We're having this conversation wrapping up Heritage Month, which is themed celebrating South Africa's literary classics, but we're not necessarily only looking at classic, and we have with us Lorato Trok, who's an author, and we also have Veronica Klipp, who is from Verts Press. Thank you so much for making the time. We also have Rosina Sedibane Modiba, who is a former runner and the subject of a book that Lorato has written. As we continue to bring up new conversations about what to write about in telling the South African story, you've written about Rosina, but what are the important conversations in your opinion?
Well, I think we need to be talking about, especially, you know, in terms of literature and with my background on early literacy that we are doing. Puku Children's Literature Foundation had a workshop recently where we had writers together writing in Setswana, in the Nama language, in the Ngu language. The languages were, you know, they're endangered languages. So those are the things that we need to be talking about, that literature is not only for people who are literate. There's this old woman in the Northern Cape called Oma Katrina Esau, who the president celebrated during the Heritage Month celebration in Uppington, she's illiterate, she cannot read and write. She's the only
treasure trove of stories.
She's a treasure trove. She's what we call, you know, indigenous knowledge system. She's just that, where she teaches the children the Ngu language. She's there are only 4 people in the world who are left who can speak the language. But she cannot write, she cannot read. But she started a school in her backyard teaching the neighborhood kids how to speak the language. And her granddaughter is the only one who can actually read and write in the language. Those are the stories that we should be looking at as well. Not only, you know, because literature is just there are so many folds to it. And when Puku produced her book during our workshop in March, that's the very first book in South Africa that has been produced, that's in print. In the Ngu language, there's absolutely no print available, no other book. And even the Nama book that Puku produced is the first South African Nama book that's produced in South Africa, because they've been using Nama, Namibian Nama. So those are the stories that we should be looking at as well, that there's just so many ways where we can produce literature out there to the children, especially because once we get the foundation right, then we will get everything right.
Veronica, you brought us a beautiful catalogue of books, and I hope our Jeep can be able to just come up and show them. But how is the academic space, how's Verts Press interacting with the indigenous languages?
Well, interestingly, Wits Press, it started in 1922, and one of the first projects that it embarked on was publication of the African Treasury series, which were books, essays, plays, poetry, written in African languages. And that was a series started by Clement Doak, who at that time was head of the African Language Department at Wits. And some of the authors include, for example, Benedict Vilakazi, who is
the sports star.
No, he was a writer and the first black lecturer at Wits University. And these books are actually still in print now. So we're busy digitizing them. Some of them are still being used at school. And then Clement Doak and Vilakazi together started the first isiZulu English dictionary, and that is still the classic and the standard for the language in South Africa. And that was published in the 1940s. So more recently, we have published some books in indigenous languages. I mean, I think one challenge is that bookshops are focused on English literature. So one has to try and find the audience in other ways for these books. And that is also a bit of a challenge, actually.
I just want to finish off our conversation with Rosina, so I'm going to leave you out for a bit now and just finish off with the authors. How do we solve that problem that Veronica is talking about, of not having a market for indigenous language books?
I don't think there's no market. I think people want to read what they can relate to. Instead of just, there's a market. I mean, we get inundated by parents who say, I need books in isiZulu, I need books in Sesotho, and so on. How can I get my children's books in these languages? It's only, that is why we are doing the work that we are doing, that reviewing the children's books and then putting them up on our website, on Puku's website, where the parents can access the books. So it's a matter of not knowing what is it that is available.
But invariably the kind of books you're talking about go into the academic space and education. How do we encourage people to pop out money to buy books?
Because the main thing that we also want is the investment. If we can work with academics like the Verts Press and UNISA and all those academic books, saying that making children's literature as well a part of academia, and saying maybe we can train undergraduate children to know how to review the books or how to write, originate stories in African languages, because you get all these books that are translated but not originated, and it's become so different when people write in their own languages and so on. So we want investment, not just funding NGOs that are doing this work, but the investment, the buy-in from academic as well, so that these books are also available as academic researches on what is available and where they can get all these things and so on. So
I'm going to ask both you and Veronica, how in your different spaces are you affected by the digitization of things?
Well, right now, I think what spaces like Puku, African Storybook, Nalibali, and so on that works in early literacy, that we are digitizing the work now, because we realize that so many people are actually working in the digital space, and even children can access books digitally and so on. So that is why we are now part of the digitization.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important strategy for us. So we have started digital production and dissemination, and that is one way of reaching audiences perhaps that don't have access to those quality bookshops that are mostly found in big city centers. So in South Africa, I think it's still in its infancy, and but it's a growing trend internationally as well. It allows us to circulate our books internationally. But in South Africa, it's going to grow, and it's going to increasingly become the place where people find their books.
Rosina, let's talk to you again. It's such an amazing story, and I imagine we're going to have to call you back in because we can't complete it in this one interview.
Yes.
Why is it that South Africans haven't known about this amazing story?
You know, the thing of segregation, it worked hard for us. It was hard for us because it really made us apart. Therefore, you know, people like us were not recognized, they were not seen as people. Therefore, it's just because we have that potential to compete them, therefore they couldn't ignore us. They have to bring us in to compete with them because we have the same potential. Therefore, the issue of not being recognized, you know, I used to call myself forgotten hero because no one recognized me until somebody like Mr. Lorato came to my place and said, no, we wanted to name a school about you. Then I said, people knows and think about me, but he is black. Then in order for me to be, the school to be named after me, there was nomination. They nomination people because they want the school to be named in a lady or from a female athlete or a singer and so on. Nomination come, and then they wanted support. And then from one of the article that was written in Sowetan by Gabu Tungwane, that article had everything. Then Mr. Lorato, because my parents used to keep all the newspapers article together, they are brown and what was.
It was a source of pride, it's understandable.
We're still able to read them. Therefore, because from those sorts of articles, the old articles, Mr. Lorato took them to the finalization of the name. And then after reading the article, no one wanted to read anything. They said, this is the one. This is the person that the school has to be named after. Then I started to say, I'm starting to be recognized. And then that's when people started to know a little bit about Rosina. But, you know, if it's a school, it's just there, it's a school, you know, usually they name things after people who have already passed on.
Absolutely,
still
and this one is alive.
Sorry, come on.
You can continue.
Yeah. Still, people thought that Rosina Sedibane Modiba has already passed on. Yes, they thought that I'm an ancestor, but I'm still alive.
What are your thoughts about South Africa's democracy and how it handles the issue of sport development?
the issue of sports development, you know, the new South Africa had to go back to schools in order for the sports to be good. They had to go back to school as you used to do. Firstly, during our time, the schools were the main source of sports people. The school, they used to make talent search from the schools. In order to get the good people for sports, they used to search them from the schools. Yeah. Therefore, the democracy had to go back to schools, had to fund the schools, so that the schools can take part in all sporting code. Not only that, we used to be soccer, athletics only. Yeah. Therefore, they had to fund all those sporting code, so that the children can get all the sporting code. They'll be able to take part in all sporting code, and then therefore we will be able to compete the other lands, because we start from the small ones. They start to run, they start to play rugby at the smaller age, tennis and everything. Therefore, when they are big enough to compete in Olympics, in the World Cup, then because they are strong, they've started from the beginning. Not to start the person from the 18-year-old, starting the person from 18-year-old to compete in the Olympics. To compete in Olympics, to go to World Cup. No, we have to start them from the beginning. From a 16-year-old should be able to represent us in the Olympics.
Ladies, I want to tell you, this is one of those conversations where, as an anchor, I really want to go on and on and on, but unfortunately, it's not entirely up to me. But thank you so much. I think the little bit that we were able to put out there has been so valuable. Lorato, you have an event today. Tell us about that quickly as we close off.
Oh, a friend of mine has organized a launch in Westin to launch Rosina's book today at 2. Yeah. So that's where we are heading.
And this is incorporates the Heritage Month activities.
Yes, and celebrating the woman of Rosina's stature as well. Yeah. So that's where we're going today.
Thank you so much for coming through today. Veronica, in closing, how should people be interacting with the literature output of academic institutions such as Verts Press?
Well, I think they mustn't be scared of it. You know, I think there's often a perception that this is based on research, I won't be able to read it, and in fact that isn't really true. And there are absolute gems to be found amongst scholarly books. So I think that's the main thing. Don't be scared, and have a look at what the presses are doing.
Again, thank you very much, Rosina Sedibane Modiba, for coming through to talk to us today. It's been an awesome conversation. Thanks to all three of you.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our conversation, where we're really trying to wrap up the theme of Heritage Month as we come to the end of that celebration in the country. At least for once we have something to celebrate, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, on to other stories. The family of former